6.2 Factoring trinomials. In this session, first we're going to review the trinomial has a leading coefficient 1, so which is right here, right? Where the leading coefficient is 1. And we need to know how to factor this very quickly so that when the leading coefficient is not 1, I will show you a strategy to write it out, and then with the help of a calculator, then you can do it fast. Okay. All of us coming from a different instructor from the previous course, so you may learn it different ways on factoring. If you remember, you don't have to follow the techniques that I'm going to be showing to you. You still can use whatever you learned before and make sure you can do it fast. So when I talk about factoring trinomials, I like the students to see there's 4 different cases that we can have. If you can see, the trinomial has both positive term, then we will get both positive factor. If you have the first term is a negative and the second term is a positive, then we will get both negative factor. So in summary, if your third term is both positive, then you will either get both positive factor or both negative factor depending on your second term. Okay? But however, if your third term is a negative, then you will get one positive factor and one negative factor. And depending on your middle term, the second term, we will have to decide where the positive and negative is going to go. So let's take a look at the first example. Okay. Let me erase this. Let me erase this. So looking at example 1, I can see that the last term is a positive and the middle term is also positive. So that tells us both of the factor will be positive. Since the first term is a squared, so I will have only a and a on the first term. Now we need to think about the factor of 20. When we add it up, it will be 9. Because the factor of 20, I have 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 3 does not go into it, 4 times 5, and then 5 times 4. Now notice that you're repeating already, so therefore you don't need to continue any further. And what we want is when we multiply two numbers, it should be 20 and add it up to be equal to the middle term 9. So this gives us this factor will work because 4 times 5 will give me 20, 4 plus 9 will give me 4 plus 5 will give me 9. So therefore my answer will be a plus 4 and then a plus 5, and that will be my final answer. Let's take a look at on the second example. Second example, my third term is a positive, the middle term is a negative. That tells us both of the factor will be negative. And the very first term, b squared, is basically b times b. Right? B times b. Now, I have to think about the last term. Which two numbers multiply to be 10 and then added up to be 7? because a plus sign right here tells us to add. Okay, so this will become 1 times 10, 2 times 5, 3 does not go into it, and then so it will come out again 5 times 2, right, at the end. So we can stop. And we know that 2 and 5, that will be multiply it and then give you 10, add it up, give you 7. So therefore, my final answer will be b minus 2 and b minus 5. Continuing. So for this one, you can see that the third term is a negative, and the second term is negative also. So when the third term is a negative, it tells us it will be one positive or one negative factor. So we don't know where this positive and negative factor is going to be, right? And we have to be careful with the number when we put it in. So as usual, c squared, that gives us c times c. Now we're going to look at the number 30. When we multiply it, that will be negative 30, and then when we add it up, that should be negative 1. So that will be 1 times 30, but that will not give you negative 30, right? So it must be 1 times negative 30. Let's put it this way. Let's look at the number first. 2 times 15, and 3 times 10, 4 times, can 4 goes into it? No. Can 5 goes into it? Yes, 5 times 6. So among these factors, I can see that when we multiply together, that will be 30, and then when we subtract it, that will become what? Negative 1, because this is telling you to, right here, tell you to subtract. So, and then we want the negative to be bigger, so it must be negative 6 and then positive 5, because negative 5 plus positive 5 plus negative 6, that will give us what? Positive 5 and negative 6 will give us negative 1. That will be our final answer. Continue in the next problem. Again, here is a negative, and this is a positive. That tells us that we will get one positive factor and one negative factor. The first term, d squared, is just d and d. Now we're going to have to consider this 32. When you multiply, it will be 32, and when you subtract it, it will be positive 4. So 1 times 32, 2 times 16, 3 does not go into it, 4 times 8, 32, 5 does not go into it, 6 does not go into it, 7 does not go into it, and then come back to 8, so we can stop because you can see that it's repeating. So now you can clearly see that two number multiplied will be 32, and when you subtract it, that will be 4, which is this part. And since we want a positive 4, the larger number has to be positive, so it will be 8 and then 4. So that will give us positive 8 minus 4 will be positive 3. And this will be my answer for this one. You can easily check it. Let me go back and then help you to see how do we check it. Do you see we got it right or not? So when you foil in it, all you have to do is check this outer, which is 5a, positive 5a, inner, positive 4a. Notice that this 4a and 5a together, that gave you what? 9a. So you can easily check. Okay. And also take a look at on the next one. And you check in it. The outer will be what? Negative 5b. The inner will be negative 2b. When you combine these two together, that will be negative 7b. So that's good. So that's how you can check all your work, making sure that your signs are correct also. Right? So the next one, if you check in it, like this one, right? So then my outer will be negative 6c, the inner will be plus 5c. So when you combine together, that will be negative c. So that's we are good. So you can always check on these kind of problem, right? Let's continue. So when you have a multivariable case, you treat it the same way, but however, you need to write it into this format. All right? So you have to write down first variable square, and then in the middle will be both of the variable, and then the last variable square. So as usual, plus sign, and the second term is the negative, so that tells us both of the term will be negative. The first term is e squared, so that will be e and e right here. Now the last term, let's look at the number as usual, because this time we know that two number multiplied to be 6, and then added up to be 5, negative 5. So it'll be 1 times 6 is 6, 2 times 3 is also 6, and then we can see that 2 times 3, when you added up 2 and 3, that will give me 5, because right here it's telling us to add. So now, that's how you can remember. So now, you can write it down 2f and then 3f. So notice that the only difference is from before is because of the last term has f squared, we need to put f on both of them. And this will be my final answer. Moving on to the next one. G. So as usual, the last term is the negative and the second term is positive. So this last term negative tells us we will have one negative factor and one positive factor. And the middle term tells us that after we subtract the number, we should get a positive. So as usual, g squared, that gives us g and g right here. And the last term is 20h squared. So 20, we want to multiply two numbers, get 20, and subtract to get 1. So 2 times 10, 3 does not go into its 4 times 5, and then we found that already. Because 4 minus 5 give me 5 minus 4 give me 1. So now that tells us we want a negative 4 and positive 5. So that way the result will be positive GH. So let's check. Right? Let's check. We can always check. Multiply the outer, that will be 5GH positive, and multiply inner, that will be negative 4GH, which we combine together, that will give me a positive GH. So we are good. And you really need to be able to factor these type of problem fast, right? When the leading coefficient is 1 right here, you need to be able to factor these type very fast. So that way we can continue on the next type a lot faster.